Welcome dear students, I am Richa Shakya, Assistant Professor in Noida Institute of Engineering Technology, Pharmacies Institute, Greater Noida. Today I am here to deliver the lecture from the subject Human Anatomy and Physiology-II, and the subject code of this is BP201T, and this subject comes into the B Pharma, and this course under Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Technical University. So today's topic is the anatomy and the functions of the male, or in the last lecture we discussed about the male reproductive system, and now we discuss about the female reproductive system. So basically we again start with the introductory part. So reproduction is a process by which the organism make their more organisms like themselves. So the human reproductive system organs which produce the same pair of springs, and it provides to all the organs present normally construct and function properly. So this is an introduction about the reproductive system. The organ of the female reproductive system is to produce and sustain the female sex cells, that is the egg or the ova, and this egg cell or the ova cell transport these to the site where they may be fertilized by the sperm and provide the favorable environment on the condition for the developing of the fetus, and to move the fetus to the outside at the end of the development of the period and the production of the female sex hormone. So again there is a sperm cells in the male, and there is a egg cells in the female, that is a male and is a female, and it forms a zygote, and after that it will forms the embryo, and after that for the further process it forms the fetus. After that it when come down it's a child or so this is a process. Now so there are the some female reproductive organs. These are there are the various female reproductive organs. These are ovaries, right? These are ovaries, genital tract, external genitala, female sexual responses or the hormones control, and the mammary gland. So these are the main reproductive organs of the female. So now start with the ovary. So ovary is a female reproductive organ, often a pair that produce the ova or the egg. Ova, and in the mammals secretes the hormone that is known as the estrogen and the progesterone. So these are the hormones which releases in the female. And next one is the oviduct. As the word duct means there is a tube, so there is a oviduct, a duct through which the ovum pass from the ovary to the uterus or the exterior called the fallopian tube into the humans. Next is the vulva. So what is vulva? Vulva consists of the female external genital organs, and next in the oogenesis, just like as a spermatogenesis process, there is a process of the formation of the egg cell. The process of the formation of the egg cell is known as oogenesis. The process of formation of the sperm cell, it is known as the spermatogenesis. So what is oogenesis? The formation and the development of the ova or the egg cells. It is known as the oogenesis. Now, so there's some internal and the external female reproductive organs. So there is some external structures of the female reproductive organs like vulva. So the external part of the female reproductive system organs is called as the vulva, which means the covering, right? The location it between the legs, the vulva covers the opening of the vagina and other reproductive organs inside the body, right? Now next, the major structure of the vulva includes labia majora and labia minora, mons pubis, clitoris, bulb of vestibules, vulva vestibule, vestibular gland and genital orifices, that is the opening of the vagina. So these are the external structure of the female reproductive organs. So this is the structure of the female reproductive organs. So this is the vaginal opening. There is an external view and there is an internal view. So this is the vaginal opening. There is a urethral opening. So there in the male reproductive system there is a passing of the sperm and the passing of the urine is the same tract, but in the female there is some urethral opening for the passing of the urine and there is a vaginal opening. Now this is the bulb vestibule, this is the corpus cavernosum and this is the labella minora, this is the glans clitoris, this is prepuce and this is the opening of the right bulbous gland. So this is a structure of the female reproductive system. Now, so the fleshy area located just above top of the vaginal opening, it is called as the mons pubis and there is a two pairs of the skin flaps called as the labia, which means the lips, the surrounding vaginal opening. Next is the mons pubis. So what is mons pubis? It is a fleshy protuberance over the pubic bone that becomes covered with the hairs during the puberty. So after the puberty there is a growing of the hairs, so it is on the mons pubis. Then labia majora. So labia majora, they are the two outer rounded folds of adipose tissues that lie on the either side of the opening of the vagina. So that is a labia majora. Then clitoris, a small sensory organs located towards the front of the vulva, that where the fold of the labia joins between the labia are opening of the urethra that carries the urine part from the bladder to the outside of the body and vagina, right? The area between the labia minora, it is called as vulva vestibule and it contains the vaginal and urethral openings, and the urethral opening is located below the clitoris and just in front of the vagina. This is where the urine pass from the urinary bladder. So there is a two parts. There is a urinary pass from the this one, right? Now these are about the external structure of the female reproductive system. Now we discuss about the internal structures of the female reproductive system. Now, so the internal female reproductive system, female genital system, contains the two main parts, that is the uterus and the ovaries. So these are the two internal structures of the female reproductive system. So uterus, it hosts the developing of the fetus, produce the vaginal and the uterine secretions, and passes the anatomical and male sperms through the fallopian tubes. Now ovaries, so they are help in the produce the anatomical female egg cells, means ovaries are ovaries are help in the production of the female egg cells, produce and secrete the estrogen and the progesterone. So there is a two hormones which releases from the female reproductive organs. These are the estrogen and the progesterone. Now this is the entire structure of the female reproductive system. So this is the vagina, okay, and this is the cervix. This area is a myometrium. This is the external orifices of the uterus. This is the internal orifice of uterus, vaginal fornix. This is the isthmus of uterus, that is the endometrium. This here is a ureter, uterine opening of the oviduct. This is the this is the mesoovarium. This is corpus albicans, corpus luteum. This yellow part is the corpus luteum, and this is a tertiary follicle. This structure is known as a fimbri of uterine tubules or fimbri of uterine tube. This is the suspensory ligaments of the ovary. This is ovarian artery. This is the fallopian tube, and this is the uterine part of the uterine tubes. Now this is a fundus of the uterus. This is a ampulla, efferon. This is the infundibulum, right. This is isthmus of the uterine tubule, mesosuffix. This is the ovary, right. Now this is a broad ligament of the uterus. This is the ovarian ligament, mesometrium, body of the uterus, and uterosacral ligaments. Uterosacral ligaments means the ligaments of the uterus and the sacral bone. It is known as the uterosacral ligaments. This is a structure of the internal female reproductive organ. Now, so this is about the internal female reproductive organs. So first is the ovaries. So ovaries are the bilateral, means there are two ovaries in the left and the right side. So there is a bilateral. Ovaries are bilateral female gonads and the equivalent of the male testis. They release the ovum for the purpose of the fertilization. So when the egg will mature, it will comes from the ovary and it will get fertilized with the sperm cells. They act as an endocrine gland that secrete the various hormones which is necessary for fertility, menstruation, sexual maturation of the female, right. Each ovary is located in the ovarian fossa, that of the true pelvis, adjacent to the uterus and below the fallopian tubes. So this is the location of the ovaries. These are the bilateral, and it will release the mature egg for the zygote formation. Now, the ovary contain the four surfaces: anterior, posterior, middle and lateral. Right. So ovary contain the four surfaces, that is known as the anterior, posterior, medial and lateral, and there is a two poles, that is a superior and the inferior. Right. Now it is held in the normal position by several paired ligaments, that is suspensory ligaments of the ovary, proper ovarian ligaments and the mesovarium. These structure we study during the last slide, that is a diagram of the internal structure of the female reproductive system. Now, these ovaries receives the atrial supply from the ovarian arteries, which arise from the abdominal aorta. So these receives the blood supply from the abdominal aorta. Now next one is the uterus. So basically uterus is for after the fertilization process, the implantation process, the egg or the sperm cell will fertilize and they implant on the uterus, and the uterus will carry the fetus for the development of the new offspring. Right. Though this is the main function of the uterus. So basically here we study about the structure and the function of the uterus. So uterus is the uterus of the womb is the hollow muscular organ that located in the deep within the pelvic cavity. So this is the location of the uterus. Anterior, so anterior to the rectum and posterior superior to the urinary bladder. The uterus is normally sits in the position of anteversion and the anteflexion. So this is the exact location of the this uterus, that is the anteversion and the anteflexion. The endometrium lining of the uterus, this is the endometrium. Endometrium lining means the lining, the innermost lining of the uterus is known as the endometrium. So endometrium lining of the uterus proliferates each month in the preparation for the embryo implantation. So implantation occurs inside or the inner layer of the uterus, that is called as a endometrium. Now next, the uterus is hollow muscular that is shaped like the inverted pear. So it is just like the right. So this is just like the structure of the uterus, inverted pear, just a pear shape, it's just opposite. So it is a pear, just like the inverted pear. It has the three parts. Uterus is again divided into the three sub-parts, that is the fundus, body and cervix. Right. So basically the structure of the uterus divided into three parts, that is the fundus, body and the cervix. The fundus is the top of the uterus. The fundus part is present or located on the top of the uterus. The body means the main part of the body is the main part. So the body is the main part of the uterus and it includes the uterine cavity, right? And the cervix is a lower, the fundus is upper and the cervix is lower and narrow part of the uterus. Now, so this is the part of the uterus. It is segmentation of the uterus, that is the fundus, body and the cervix. Now, there is some layer, there are some layers of the uterus, that is the endometrium, myometrium and the perimetrium, right. So, I already told you the implantation process occurs inside the endometrium layer of the uterus, means it is the innermost layer of the uterus, right. So, the thick wall of the uterus has a 3 layers, and it is the endometrium, it is the inner layer that lies the uterus. It is made up of the glandular cells that makes the secretions. The function of the glandular cells is to secrete, right. So, the function of the glandular cells is to secrete. And the myometrium, what is myometrium? So, myometrium is the middle and the thickest layer of the uterus, and it is basically made up of smooth muscles, right, smooth muscles. So, basically the function of smooth muscles is they are uncontrolled, right, they are involuntary in nature. So, they are contract or relax, but they are involuntary in nature. So, the myometrium layer or the myometrium part is made up of the smooth muscles, and it is the thickest layer of the uterus, and it is present in the middle of the uterus, that is the endometrium, then myometrium, then perimetrium, right. Then the perimetrium, that is the outermost layer. So, the perimetrium is the outer serous layer of the uterus. The serous layer secretes the lubricating the fluid that help to reduce the friction. The perimetrium is also a part of the peritoneum that covers the some organs of the pelvis. So, the perimetrium layer is the outermost layer, and it is made up of the serous layer, and the serous layer, the function of the serous layer is to secrete more and more mucus. So, when the secrete more mucus, so it reduces the frictions, right. Now, if the fertilization occurs, the uterus acts to the house of the growing fetus and its a placenta. If the pregnancy does not occurs, sometimes what happen, at that time the fertilization not occurs, right. So, not occurs, the endometrium lining is shed during the menstruation, right. So, there is some process of fertilization is not occurs properly. So, at that time during the menstruation period, the endometrium lining will shed off during the menstruation. The uterus is divided into the 3 subparts, that is body. It is the main part of the uterus, it is connected with the uterine horns, and it is an internal chamber, and it is a hollow cavity. Now, isthmus. So, the isthmus is considered a part of uterus that is located between the body and the cervix, right. It is present in between the body and the cervix. And last one is the cervix, it is the last part of the uterus, that is the inferior portion of the uterus. It consists of 2 parts, supravaginal, vaginal and 2 opening, that is internal os and external os. There is an opening, there is internal os and external os, and there is a cervical canal. The uterus is partially covered with the peritoneum, and it reflects from the uterus to the rectum, urinary bladder, 2 folds from the recto-uterine pouch, that is a Douglas, and the vesico-uterine pouch. Now, this is a vagina. So, vagina is the outermost internal female sex organ, and this extends from the uterus to the vulva, and functionally it facilitates the menstruation, sexual intercourse or the childbirth. Vagina is located on the posterior to the urinary bladder, urethra, and anterior to the rectum. The upper end of the vagina is attached to the cervix of the uterus. These structures form the pouch which has the anterior, posterior and lateral parts. So, this is a structure of the vagina. The lower end of the vagina opens the vaginal vestibules just behind the uteral orifices. The vaginal orifices may be partially covered with the membrane. It is known as the hymen, and the vagina supplied the branches of the internal iliac, that is the artery, uterine, vaginal, internal, pedicle arteries, and by the vaginal veins which flow into the internal iliac veins. Now, there is some nerve supply to the drive, that is the inferior hypogastric plexus via uterovaginal plexus, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers that convey the thoracolumbar, that is a T12 to L1, and the pelvic splenic nerves, that is a sacral to the sacral 4. The pendicle nerve via deep perineal nerve, and the lymph is drained from the vaginal into the iliac and the suprainguinal lymph nodes. Then next one is a uterine. Next one is uterine. Uterine tubules are the bilateral organs. It extends from the uterine horns, and the uterine tubes are intraperitoneal organs. Now next one is of infundibulum. Infundibulum is the distal part of the uterine that tubes opens the peritoneal cavity. Ampulla, it is the longest, widest part of the uterine. Isthmus is a narrow part of the uterine tube, and last one is the internal uterine part that communicate directly with the uterine cavity via the uterine ostium. Thank you. So, this is all about the female reproductive system, internal, external and with their functions. Thank you.